Hello, everyone. It's Mike with Politics again. Second video today, or second video in, 3 days. I'm going to start making videos, but it's not going to be as, super specific as it used to be. And today's video is actually something I've been talking about a little bit with other channels that I do on my podcast and stuff like that. So it's not unusual for me to talk about this. But it is unusual for me to talk about it on this channel because I think it is something that people need to be aware of. And people need to be aware of this problem. Because it doesn't necessarily fix the problem. And it doesn't really fix the problem to have this response. So let's basically get started. If you like this video, share it with others. If you really think they might get some benefit from it, subscribe, click that notification bell if you want to see more videos from me in the future, and let's get started. So, a lot of people, many people, have this kind of like attitude, mistaken attitude, that things are worse than they've ever been, or that it's the end of the world, and that things are horrible, the most horrible they've ever been. And that's just not true at all. It's never been true. As far as that goes, the end of the world, all this stuff, you're hearing about if you don't fix climate change within the next 12 years, it's going to be the end of the world, and it's just like, that's not how this works. Number one, you've been saying that for 30 years now. You said the end of the world would happen like 12 years ago. This type of thing. So, number one, that's just not how this works. And if you think about this logically, like, what exactly it doesn't mean to say the end of the world. Most people look at the negative and they don't understand the positive. They don't understand the actual situation here, and the system as well. And climate change is a problem in itself, because most climate change people are against nuclear, which is the one source that would actually give us very little carbon footprint. And so it's no longer about what's actually what would actually work to fix this problem. It's more about ideology at that point. And it's not really about logic and truth. It's about, what you believe is true. That's the problem we have with most politics as well. Same problem. So most people think the end of the world is here. Things are worse than they've ever been. It's just not that way at all. You can see funny videos like this on TikTok where they're like doing these skits where like 2020 is here, and he's like, ha 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 ha, I brought you COVID and stuff like this. And it's just like, I get what you're trying to say, but that's just not the way things are. So COVID is a good example to start with. As far as viruses go, it's actually very not the strongest virus in the universe. Viruses have killed way more in the past. The bubonic plague in Europe killed about like a quarter to a fifth of the population. The influenza epidemic of 1918 killed about 50 million. Malaria kills a lot more than that. I think it was throughout the 20th century. It's about like 50 to 100 million. And so to say that COVID is actually a really bad virus is not true. It's just not. It's not fun, and it's not the greatest virus in the universe, but it's not the worst virus that exists. And it's not the end of the world. The deaths that have come because of COVID are disheartening and bad, don't get me wrong, but they're not the worst in the world when it comes to viruses. And so we have a situation where the facts outweigh other facts that aren't even realized or seen for what they are, or seen at all. So what is happening is we have a situation where it seems like nothing seems to be stopping the virus and things like this. But if we were to take the same tack when it comes to another virus, like I don't want to say that COVID is like the flu, because it's not, but say you take the flu, for instance, and do the same things that we're doing with COVID, we'd have the same problem. We would not be able to deal with the problem in the same way. The only reason why the COVID is so important is because it's new, and there isn't really a whole lot of, there wasn't, at least at the time, a whole lot of treatments to deal with it. Now there are, and now there are less. It's less of a problem than it was, which it really wasn't, but it was in comparison to other viruses at the time, and so that is one of the reasons why I give some caveats here. Before all this started, poverty has steadily gone down and things like this. And even with the lockdowns, the poverty has, gone up because the lockdowns have gone on for way, way too long. And we're entering a point where we can't reasonably keep this going for another year. But that's what they're saying is going to be another year. That's just not reasonable at all. You cannot keep an economic system down for an entire year. It's not going to be very helpful at all. But that's another subject, and I think there's some nuances here. I think there's some things that could be done, in particular, that would make the virus less of a problem, and make it so that few catch it. That are already, some of them are already implemented, and there's others. And I might talk about that in another episode, but that's just one example. There's many, 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 many examples. And the biggest contributor to these is social media and the media itself, journalism. Because journalism, like I said, I'm going to be releasing an episode in the future. I forgot to do it, actually. I was going to do it, and then I got kind of distracted, but social media and journalism is contributing to this big time. And so the problem isn't really that this is a problem, so much as it is the ineffectual problem. It's a very ineffectual way of doing things, and actually makes things worse. And so when you see things as, ending, and there's a big problem, and it's the biggest problem in the world, and this type of thing. Oh, it's so horrible. It creates a panic. It creates a problem, and it actually, because the emotions are now stronger than they were, people are less able to work and think efficiently, and so they make really bad decisions. And so we have really bad decisions that are made in regards to this. Really, really bad decisions, like Cuomo, he forced nursing homes to open to put COVID patients in nursing homes, which actually made the problem worse. That's what I'm talking about. When you have this problem of, oh, it's the end of the world, we have to do something. No, you're not going to be thinking reasonably, logically, and factually. And you're going to have emotion over logic, and that's not going to help the situation. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help others. So it's actually more important and more useful to do is to actually be calm and peaceful in these moments. That's how you get confidence, and that's how you solve problems. Period. Like, you can say what you want about oh no, the world's going to end and it's a big problem. Fine, it might be. But at the same time, having that attitude is not fixing the problem, it's making it worse. And so you need to calm yourself down, take some deep breaths. And then you can start thinking reasonably and logically. And then the decisions aren't, maybe they're not going to be maybe they're not going to be perfect, but they're going to be better than they were before. And that's really why I wanted to make this episode, because thinking this way does not fix the problem, makes it worse. And the lockdowns that we're experiencing, most places are experiencing, like big cities and stuff, isn't, I don't know if I'd say it's unnecessary, but I will say that I think that it's overblown, and I think it's making problems worse. The World Health Organization has said that it's not helping people. Causing more people to starve. Like, what is it, like 250 million people are going to starve if this continues for too long. It's already starting to happen, having more poverty problems. We already know this. So this lockdown is not fixing the problem. So how do you deal with this problem without truly just locking everything down, but also, having an economy at the same time? Because we can't keep locking down. It's not working. It's not fixing the problem. Of course, honestly, my bias is that the problem is not the lockdowns themselves and stuff like that. It's the big cities that people live in. Big cities are not really helpful for you anyways. There's a experiment that kind of shows this. Although it has more to do with prisons, actually. It's kind of a freaky experiment that went into this, but it had more to do with a kind of prison system that people were found themselves in. Basically what it was they had a bunch of mice, and these really they were really crowded in these areas and kind of like a city, and they grew up. And they ended up being, some of them really, a lot of them were eventually very damaged by this and, had a lot of mental problems and stuff like this. And you see a lot of this in prisons, and now you're seeing a lot of this right now. It's not a coincidence. And so there has to be a nuanced perspective here. There has to be multiple avenues besides just locking everything down. One of them is mask, yes. One of them is, yes, locking certain people down in certain areas. People who are, if exposed to the virus, would be more likely to have problems from it than others. And, moving those others that would have the problem somewhere isolated, maybe. I mean, that sounds kind of dictatorial, but if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. And so the economy can still work, and people can still do what they have to do, but they can now do whatever it is they're doing now. And there's no need for locking everyone down and having no nuance about this at all. That's another subject for another time. So, having a panicked mind helps you make worse decisions, bad decisions. So basically my point in this episode is that, everybody's going to tell you that everything's horrible, it's the worst it's ever been. Don't listen to them. It's just not true. And so when somebody tells you this, you have to be ready to, at least in your mind, if not out loud, to give yourself alternative facts that tell you a different story about life. There's a book you can read. I haven't really read it yet. I want to, but it's called The Better Angels of Our Nature. It was written by Steven Pinker. I think he is a psychologist type, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyways, he writes a couple of good books. I'm also reading one right now from him called How the Mind Works. Or not right now, but I've read it in the past and haven't read all of it yet. I'm just reading it off and on here and there. And, 137,000 people go out of, poverty every year. Maybe not as much this year because the lockdowns and stuff, but, there's things like this that the media doesn't tell you. They're all focused on fear and stuff like that because it sells. And it's because it's eye-catching. So just keep that in mind when looking at what people are saying and what the media is saying. And so, yeah. Anyways, this is Mindful Politics, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.